Once upon a time you dressed so fine. You threw the bums a dime in your prime, didn't you? This is for everyone who's over 45. People call, say beware doll, you're bound to fall. You thought they were all kidding you. You used to laugh about. Everybody know this? Everybody that was hanging out. Now you don't talk so loud. Now you don't feel so proud to be having to be scrounging. Come on, sing it. Your next meal, oh, how does it feel? Guitar part. How does it feel to be on your own, like a complete unknown, like a rolling stone? Bob Dylan wrote that song in 1965. I wasn't born yet. But I know Bob Dylan. And what I know about him is that he had hit a wall. He had been touring, and he was worn out. He was tired of the music he was playing. He said that he didn't even want to be playing his own songs. So in 1965, he left the tour in London and came back to New York City. You can see a lot of this in the film Don't Look Back. And he got on a motorcycle and drove up to Woodstock, New York, a place I was in this summer. And he went to a cabin. He didn't even take a guitar. He had nothing with him. He went into a moment of isolation, really. He was tired and worn down. And this song came through him, this unloved song, as it is described, and changed songwriting in America at that moment. Like a Rolling Stone became a great hit and re-energized Bob Dylan's career. So why do I tell you that? Because I like Bob Dylan. I tell you that because it's a story of where creativity bursts through the Spirit. Here's a person who was a professional musician. He was creative. He was living in that life, but he hit a blockage. He hit a moment where he couldn't go on. He couldn't continue to produce. So what he needed was that moment where it dipped down, where he stopped and he listened. He listened for the creative spirit once again. This story's played out in many different fields and many different times, maybe even in your life. Archimedes and Einstein and Mozart and Newton all describe these kinds of moments where they had to stop. They had to listen. They had to receive in order to give again. Anyone who's a parent knows that need as well, or a teacher, or someone who's committed to their work, knows that that moment of creativity requires that stepping back. Because the creative spirit moves, like Natalie Goldberg said in the reading. We spend all our time focused on that dot in the big sky, that dot that is the monkey mind that keeps telling us we're not good enough, or telling us what's on our to-do list, or telling us what we can't do. And all around we miss this big, beautiful universe that spins every day with beauty and ugliness, with chaos and order, with color and the lack of color. All these experiences. Just moving from our homes to this place, we passed 1,000 processes, 1,000 things. And we probably picked up on just a few of them. The story of Bob Dylan and the story of all these other people says that the creative spirit, or that creative spark, is not just something that's owned by artists, it's owned by all of us. It happens when we can remove our view from that point in the sky and see all around us. Now, scientists are trying to describe this in terms of brain chemistry also. They say somewhere over the right ear, everyone touch that spot right there in your right ear. You're very cooperative today, it's amazing. Just that spot right over that right ear, they say, is where the creative impulse is. It's not somewhere out there. It's ours to own. When we have an aha or a creative idea, there's a surge of gamma ray, there's a surge of electricity and blood that moves into this spot right over the ear where my microphone is hanging. We are all here because of the creative impulse. We all own the creative impulse. And each of us can make motion, can change parts of our lives by having that impulse stimulated. Sometimes it's from stopping and listening, refusing to continue to give and taking a moment to receive. Those moments when those ahas arrive. It's why we have places like art museums and concerts and churches. To come for a moment where the receptivity is open, where our process in our brain, where the soul is filled up by the singing, by the song, by the words, by the silence, and we can change how we relate to our lives. We can open to the experience of what's happening around us. This is why there is religion, too. There is nothing in the world without the creative impulse. There is no farming practices. There are no phones in your pockets without that creative imagination. And there is no religion without that either. You see, I always think that religion is the human response, the human creation to the problem of having to live and having to die and making sense of that. And so all religion comes from a creative impulse. Some of it is obscured down the road, but all starts with a creative impulse. Just think about Christianity, in fact. There's a huge creative leap one has to make to become a Christian. The first is that the Christian has to understand that their mind is not private. That when they pray, they are praying into the mind of God. That God knows their mind. The second is that they have to make the creative leap that people aren't always visible. That Jesus is there even when you don't see him. And they have to make the leap that love is not always conditional, which is one I like. Now, some of those premises in Christianity, I know you in the pews have found a little unreasonable and maybe found your way here. But what is the you act of creativity? That creative leap that we have to make. And I believe it is 4 things, and I don't want to forget them, so I'm going to look at my notes. One is that God is always bigger than its name. For yous, God must always be bigger than its name. The second is that humanity is always better than it behaves. That in our hearts we have a trust and a faith in the human spirit that goes beyond the behavior we witness. Third is that mutuality is the evidence of the holy. That we see the divine when we experience a mutual spirit. And lastly, that love is always available and not always conditional, something we share with our Christian roots. To be a Unitarian Universalist, like to be a Christian or any other religious person of faith requires this creative leap, requires that creative impulse within you. Our type of religion, our type of creativity asks you not to believe the unbelievable, but like artists, to expand the idea of who you are to who we are. To see that salvation is not something that is once and for all, but happens in every act of love and justice. These are creative leaps that we make, these acts of imagination that expand our world and challenge our self-indulgence and repair society if we live into them. Now, I've been thinking about creativity a lot in the last couple weeks. And I've been also listening to my own response to living here and in this place. And I want to be honest with you, returning from sabbatical was not easy. Coming back to Dallas, Texas was not easy, except for you, because I had to keep reminding myself that I was here because of you. Not because it was a struggle in some ways, because the beauty is missing, the lakes and the mountains and the rivers. You know what I mean. We don't live in a beautiful place. But even beyond that, what bothered me most is the lack of creative community. Creative community building that happens in lots of places. I see a lack of it happening in Dallas. Because I see us turning over that desire for creative exchange, what I call the convergence of human spirit in places. We turn that over to corporations like Whole Foods and other places we believe will give us those kinds of creative communities. And I'm having trouble naming what that is exactly. I see some of it in places like Oak Cliff and Lakewood and others. But it's where the spirit of the individual who sees a desire and addresses it in community is not squashed by private interest. I see that in other parts of the world, and I despair of that here in Dallas. And we're turning over so much of that creative interchange, that quality convergence is what I call it, to businesses rather than taking it on ourselves. And this is where we come in. This year in church is to make an opportunity for Dallas through our efforts to create what we want to see. This year of the creative spirit has the potential for us to invite in our city and to go out into our city and create moments where quality convergence happens. To unleash the power of creativity, to help us see the holy in all different ways, to articulate a vision of the world that we want to see, to find a path to the divine, to seek ways to save our lives and our world. Our year, in part, is to try and do that, to help us lose control, to find the lump in the throat, to follow a crazy love, to enjoy the aesthetics of color and movement and song, and find in all this a spiritual response. To go on this journey with us, it means you have to be willing to fail, to meet those blockages, to welcome insights, to lose control. And we think that's a worthy journey. So here's what we're going to do this year. We're going to invite you and our city to things like a UU flash mob downtown. Planned spontaneity in places like the new park downtown. We're going to invite you to an art show and to our version of the TED Talks where you are the speakers. To come and hear a rock star who grew up in this church, to attend classes on writing your own spiritual autobiography and exploring literature and play reading, to write hymns and sing them, to hear extemporaneous preaching, no net preaching we were going to do on October 6th. I invite you to see that. Completely improv. Because we want to live into that creative spirit also. That scary place, but that energized place. To follow the spirit of the creative impulse is what we want to do this year. To ask you to find your unique role in building the kind of world you want to live in. To ask you to find the divine and to seek the holy. To ask you to be honest about your struggles and fears. To fail and to learn from it. And know that love abides beyond all conditions. So expect surprises this year. Expect community building. Expect humble reflection. And expect to have fun. To have fun. We believe that everyone at every stage of life can be part of building a church that is filled with hope and beauty through the creative spirit. And so we welcome you to this church year. You received a ribbon on the way into church, or if you didn't, they're in this courtyard here on this other side of this wall. We want you to write on this ribbon something that you will create in your life this year. It doesn't have to be a painting or a song. It could be more time. It could be more honesty. It could be anything that moves you to create. We invite you to write something on this ribbon and then go to the courtyard and put it on a mosaic of all our hopes and dreams for this year, so that we can all spend time to see what we will create together. The poet Erling II said, "Making the imagination pregnant, releasing exuberant joy, and fruitful ideas of the heart, generating new life form. To be somebody is releasing others into creative living. To reject the self-absorbed life for a life of generosity and nobility. The great things of a creative life." This is our hope for this program year and for you. To know the wild mind. To know a crazy love. To lose control. To be with us here in a year of the creative spirit. Welcome in and welcome home. Amen.